Ford continually struggles with quality, with transmission issues, engine issues, burnt out taillights, and backup cameras that don't work, or even worse, axle bolts that are releasing. It's now time to take some action. The CEO steps in and says, we have to delay the output of a lot of these vehicles. Unfortunately, that means additional wait times for the consumers. It's a tough time for car and truck purchasing these days. With escalating prices, cost of living, inflation, everybody has much higher expectations of a quality vehicle when they're spending $80,000, $90,000, or $100,000 on a pickup truck. And we also know companies like Ford have struggled with sales, particularly in the EV segment. Their E division is on the tank. But unfortunately, they truly do rely on the Blue Oval. That's their F-150 pickup trucks that everybody sees driving around. Their internal combustion vehicles, as well as their commercial divisions, are the two sectors that are only keeping the E division alive. Otherwise, the company would be belly up. But unfortunately, with the raised expectations, high costs, customers are expecting more out of the Ford brand. And unfortunately, with that said, Ford's had some struggles in recent years. And as a matter of fact, things have gotten so bad, the CEO has said, we've got to take a stand. We've got to delay some time here putting those vehicles out to market. Before they go there, we need to do much deeper dive inspections, make sure the quality enhancements are in place, and that they're not going to suffer from ill effects to 5 years down the road. As a matter of fact, there's some big ones lately. We've heard about the Maverick and the Escape. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles there potentially impacted by the fact that they have fuel injectors that could crack. Initially, Ford's response was, let's put a little catch basin, drip it out to the atmosphere, and then we can monitor for drop in fuel pressure. But unfortunately, that's not good enough, and NHTSA said, we don't like the sounds of that. And allegedly, all of this on the back of the fact that now Ford's going to have to come up with a more permanent solution, because the idea of monitoring for fuel pressure drops, and then they say that allegedly they were going to turn the vehicle off if they saw too much of a drop. What does that look like when you're driving down the freeway? So cracked injectors, Ford realizes that, and they're going to have to take a much harder stand. So before we break down a few other big ones here recently, and there's a real doozy that just popped out here this last week, I just want to share that Ford's unfortunately been one of the leaders in recalls and problem areas due to quality control concerns. And so now Ford is taking the stance of, we better take our time before we put these vehicles out. But let's summarize a few of the big ones. The Ford Maverick is number 11 overall in the industry, with about 20.7 in a 30-year lifespan to be expected. That's about 6.4 times that of the industry median of about 3.2. The F-150 is number 19 overall, with about 17.2 expected in a 30-year time frame. That's also 5.3 times the industry average of 3.2. The Bronco is also number 20 overall, with 17 to be expected in a 30-year time frame. That adds up to about 5.3 times the average. The Bronco Sport is almost 15 problems within a 30-year time frame, and that equates to about 4.6 times the industry average median. And the Ford Explorer is about 14.8 issues they can anticipate in a 30-year time frame, far too high to be acceptable. Now, another big one is 2021 to 2023 of Ford F-150s with the trailer tow max duty package and the 9.75-inch heavy-duty axle on the 3/4 float axle design has identified a rear axle bolt that could actually fatigue, start to wear, and then snap off entirely, resulting in the axle breaking away, potentially the brakes not activating, and the vehicle rolling off into La La Land. A sad state of affairs, so beware if you've got that particular vehicle, you might want to look into that recall. And we've also heard in the past of fires. We've heard of insulation falling off from below and wrapping its around a drive shaft, and a whole host of other challenges. But the latest one from Ford is about 550,000 units now, unfortunately, are inflicted with a 2014 model year F-150, where due to corrosion with the terminal pins and the speed control and the automatic transmission, the vehicle can inadvertently, driving along the freeway speed, downshift to first gear, causing a potential lockup, loss of motivation power, and as well, of course, unfortunately, veering off the road as a worst case scenario. Now, this isn't to shock anybody, and every manufacturer has some wins and some losses along the way. Unfortunately, Ford has had some big challenges due to quality control, but at least I will say on a positive note that now they're starting to take specific action, and that's holding vehicles back to search for specific issues that they know and are more familiar with before they even get to market, and not allowing the customers to be the guinea pigs of said quality challenges. So what is actually the fundamental change here? Well, since 2022, Ford grossly led the number of recalls or failures that were reported within their vehicles. They had about 67 reported issues, which equated to about 8.6 million vehicles that had to be impacted by these recall changes. And we all know that we've heard that there was a significant push and emphasis on quality, and I believe there has been, because the truth is in the numbers. What we're seeing is in 2023, Ford's managed to trim that from 67 down to 55 defects, and also the number of vehicles impacted down to 5.9 million, all the way up from just about 9. So clearly they've trimmed off a mass amount of vehicles and the issues associated, and some of their efforts have certainly paid off. Allegedly, Bloomberg reports that these repairs last year cost Ford an estimated $4.8 billion last year. So this is where all the big weight comes in. And we see lots of vehicles on the car lots, and we see this, and we say this all the time. And I'm walking car lots, and you see a lot of F-150s, you see a lot of these different vehicles parked out there. The fact is, a lot of them are 23s and 24s. And the big impact is you may be waiting for your next model. If you've signed the paperwork and you're waiting for that beautiful new pickup truck to show up, Ford's actually saying they're going to hold these vehicles back for further deeper dive inspections. It could take you at least 6 more weeks. You might wait another month or 2 months to get your vehicle, because they're holding them back at the factory to do these deeper dive inspections to make sure for known defects that they're not having more issues that are going to land up in your hands. But CEO Jim Farley says there's going to be some bumpy rides, and obviously while there's some inherent delays is going to translate to money loss, but the long-term outlook is much more money saved, less warranty claims, less recalls, and certainly a big one is the reputational impacts. And you remember very early in 24, there was about 60,000 Ford F-150s that were held back for some quality checks that allegedly a lot of people didn't really know what they were about. Well, that was just the exact reason. They were held off in Detroit, sitting on car lots, while the manufacturer went through these vehicles with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that once they were ready to go, that they sent to the customer without any of these known defects. But sadly, now the rebound effect is all that wait, all of those vehicles suddenly rushed to the car lots, and now there was waits, people went off, did different things, and now a lot of these vehicles are sitting there. And now there's a backlog, and clearly there's big pushes and incentives to sell some of these blue oval trucks, these F-150s, because they were holding back. And in the meantime, people decided either I'll wait, maybe I'll go buy a Ram or a Chevy instead, or maybe I'll fix what I've got. And in which case, a lot of people are doing that anyway. We know that the cost of living crisis is having such an impact. We know that people are struggling to make ends meet, and we know that people are making a more economical choice on a day-to-day basis. We're seeing it in sales. Used sales are starting to drop. A lot of dealers aren't necessarily showing that, but trust me, they're there. Auction houses aren't moving the vehicles like they once were, and new car and truck and SUV sales aren't exactly what a lot of these dealers are hoping for. So we're seeing the impact through cost of living crisis, as well inflation rates, as well as lending rates are all having a big impact on sales, but it doesn't help that quality is impacting a lot of these OEMs. So now it looks like Farley's also holding back on some of the refresh vehicles, and those are the ones that are really highly susceptible, because new changes, new engines, new designs, and those are the ones that have a susceptibility to failures. But next in line for these quality checks that might be delayed are the Mavericks, the Ford Bronco Sport SUVs, and even the new Explorer. So expect to wait. If you're looking for a new Ford, you're going to anticipate some waits. You'll hopefully start to see some quality enhancement and improvements on a lot of these vehicles. And they're one of the first manufacturers to bring a more cost-effective solution like the Maverick to the marketplace when everybody else was just pitching their full-size trucks. I mean, look at Ram. They're struggling. They don't have that interim model available to sell. And now they have mass amounts of days supply. And with all of that said, right there, check it out, cost of living crisis and the impacts it's having across the whole industry. Ford, GM, Ram, you get it, and the buyer. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.